Those doors, I'm a fool for your love.
This is the first Tess Talks live interview that I have done, and it's the first of many. I'm very excited. I have some really exciting guests lined up. Today, we are starting with my accountant, Julian, from Mauro Accounting and Mortgage Broking Practice. Julian has absolutely changed my life and helped me save and get on top of my finances and my business structure.
How are you, Tess?
Good.
Yeah, really good. Flattered to be the first guest on your series, so thanks again.
I know. One for the history books, mate.
That's it.
And it is, I guess, only for people in Australia, but we will run over some cool, like, saving hacks at the end, so I think everyone will kind of get a little bit out of this. We'll, everyone, I guess, kind of has probably a different setup, so we might have some freelancers viewing, we might have some business owners, we might have some full-time casual employees. So maybe what are some of the basic different things that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, so I think, whether you're an employee or self-employed, employees have it a lot easier sometimes. All the compliance is kind of looked after for you. Your employer does your taxes for you, your super, all those kinds of things. Whereas self-employed clients, they really have a bit more discipline that's needed. So you've got to look after your own super, plan to put aside for taxes. Make sure your compliance is up to date if you have people on your payroll. So just a lot more things to do as a self-employed. I often get clients, on their worst days actually saying, maybe I'll just become an employee. It seems so much easier. But
totally.
There are pros and cons of obviously both.
Definitely.
Another thing
There's also some good things about being self-employed, that you can set your own hours. So positive and positive and negatives to everything.
Exactly. You take the good with the bad. Another thing I hear is probably around deductions. So I think there's a bit of a myth that when you're self-employed, you're entitled to so much more. You often hear people that have a 9-to-5 job say that. And I don't necessarily think it's true. Self-employed people probably pay for more things, whereas an employee has those costs covered by an employer. But the actual concept of a tax deduction, it's the same. As long as you spend in relation to earning your income, so that expense is related, you can claim it whether you're an employee or you're self-employed. So I think that kind of historically needs to go as well.
How can people kind of go about finding what they can claim and kind of the thresholds that they can kind of get up to when they're claiming things?
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably a bit of a mixture. So the way that we do it is we usually start with a checklist, and kind of that goes through every single tax deduction or the ranges. From there, people, year to year, you start to learn a bit more about what's relevant to you. No one's going to really, I could say go and read the tax office, and there are a lot of great tips about what you can and can't claim, but a lot of the time it's just too much information. So speaking to, your accountant, or just finding out what's relevant for you, making it as easy as possible is probably the way that we do it. And I think that works for a lot of people because, as you know, there's a world of information out there. More often than not, it's a bit too much information.
Do you recommend most people should have an accountant?
Yeah. So, when it comes to being self-employed, 100%, I think I've seen business owners that kind of do their own taxes and they do get by, which is great. But it's that old saying, you don't know what you don't know. So you might just be getting by, but the accountant might help you, look at tax deductions that you're not claiming, which are ultimately going to save you tax. Or it might be something else altogether. It might be that you're not structured correctly, or you're not ticking all the boxes from a compliance point of view. So you might think that you're getting by, but something's probably going to be done better if you seek professional help from someone. So,
and I think the misconception can be that, an accountant can cost too much, but in the end, they can actually save you so much.
Yeah, and from our point of view, it's always about getting the best outcome for someone. So even for that employee where the stakes are lesser, if they're, knowing that they're maximising what they claim, they can sleep easy at night knowing they're not pushing the boundaries with anything too much, then, our job's done, and I think it provides comfort for both parties.
Totally. There's a big question that a lot of my friends have had on the tips of their tongues. what would be some great practical tips that you have for people to incorporate into their daily lives so that they can be prepared for the next tax year?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes without saying, but keeping records is such a must. So even if you're not sure if you can claim it as a tax deduction, if you've kept everything throughout the year and you give that to the accountant, at least you know there's less chance that you're going to miss something, right? So whether you do that, everyone's different. I've got clients that, get a shoebox, they fill it with receipts. I've got a few trendy clients, they're actually online now, so they put everything in a tax folder and they let us deal with it at the same time.
Right.
You could, if you're the next step, you look into using an app, which is probably more so for self-employed, small businesses and freelancers, and that just
what would be something you would recommend?
100% I recommend Xero initially to our clients. And I remember we did a bit of a training session at a cafe last year.
We did.
Right?
I use Xero every week. It's changed my life.
There you go. So look, it helps with, you can send invoices, you can track your expenses, it helps with your GST. So from a tax point of view, and then just for you as the business owner or the freelancer, you've got a good capture of just everything that's happened throughout the year.
Yeah.
We also think, let's just say, keeping separate bank accounts. So another quick, easy fix for keeping records. The more that you can separate your personal things and your business, the easier it is that nothing's missed and that it saves us time when it comes to tax doing everything. So I try and train people to use that one business account for all your purchases instead of us having to go through the personal bank account, sift through what's what, potentially miss things. It doesn't really help out at the end of the day. I mean, people have an array of bank accounts, but I think, at a minimum, you've got that business bank account with your income, your expenses. You have that kind of tax safe account because you don't want to get caught out at the end of the year having not put aside. So doing that as you go really helps. Then you'll have your everyday spending, your personal account, and then of course you can have savings accounts, holiday account, car account. People go nuts, but I think at a minimum, if you've got that kind of structure, it's going to help you get ahead.
Are there any basic things that you think people often miss or neglect that could be significantly helping them?
I think, let's just say car deductions, for example, because I know a lot of clients, or, whether you're employed or you're self-employed, travel for work. So, for example, there's a method with the tax office where all you need to do is keep a diary or a bit of a track of your kilometres travelled throughout the year. And it's as simple as saying, up to 5,000 kilometres, you can get a tax deduction. You don't need to keep petrol receipts. So I think the amount of compliance involved, that's a really quick, easy tax deduction. On the other side, if you're, pretty heavy into driving, you might look into doing a logbook, right? So it takes a bit longer. It takes 12 weeks to keep one, but that's probably going to get you a much bigger tax deduction. And you get to keep that logbook for 5 years. If you're heavy into, for example, using your phone, using the internet at home, then you want to make sure that you're capitalising on that. It's all based on your occupation.
Well, I feel like a lot of people's circumstances have recently changed due to coronavirus. So a lot of people are finding themselves on JobKeeper or JobSeeker. But I don't think a lot of people have thought about maybe how that might affect their accounts or how it affects their taxes coming up to end of financial year. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So once again, if you're an employee or you're self-employed, it's going to be different. So for any employee that's on the JobKeeper or the JobSeeker arrangements, the tax is being looked after for you. So I suppose what I'm getting at is all the JobKeeper and JobSeeker payments, they do still go in your tax return. So it's still classified as income, but the tax is being withheld for you. Whereas those self-employed people, they're getting the maximum $3,000 per month paid into their account. And you just got to remember once again that there's no tax that's being withheld to date. So, at tax time, you will have to pay back a small portion. So getting ahead once again and putting aside a portion of that.
Now, I know we briefly touched on savings, but because a few people would probably be really feeling the hurt from losing their job or whatever, maybe having to dig into their savings for a while, do you have any extra kind of key budgeting hacks and tips that people could kind of use to get through this current climate?
Yeah. So the three kind of tips or things that, you know, I've been saying to people throughout this period is, I think we've all had a lot of time naturally to reflect on our spending and things like that. So I definitely think taking the time to go through, see all these different subscriptions we're signed up to, actually see what's relevant and not relevant. With your savings, you can either increase your income or decrease your expenses. So income's obviously the harder one at the moment. So it's looking at, you know, what's really an expense that we need. So maybe just spending a bit of time doing that.
Yeah.
Number two, it's for people that, you know, have home loans and things like that. There's a lot of competitive interest rates at the moment. So I definitely think that talking to a mortgage broker, making sure you're actually not paying more than you need to, and there's not a better deal out there. Even a 1% reduction in your interest on your home loan will be a big savings per month. Yep. So definitely looking into that. And then number three is around tax installments. So any self-employed person gets to a point where they pay tax every quarter. Those installments are based on your last year's tax return. If your income's gone down since that point in time, there's no need that you should be paying such a high installment. So we actually have the power to vary those installments down. And the end result is that you're not paying this tax money in advance that you're going to get refunded later. You know, often the installment goes straight to the individual and they just pay them out. So it's a great message to know that you actually can vary that down, because a lot of the times people get this letter, they get a bit of anxiety, what's this for? So you're not set in doing that. You can change it.
So when do you think people need to have their taxes done by? Because I know some people that have gone years without doing it, and I don't know how they managed to do that.
I'm not sure if the tax office is listening, but anyway, no.
I hope not. I won't drop any names.
I think I can see them. They just jumped on board now. No.
Quick exit.
Yeah, quick. So look, in terms of actual due dates, notwithstanding there's those people that are really late, and essentially if you are late, there is a risk that you've got late penalties and then you potentially have to pay interest as well. But let's just say that everything's up to date in a perfect world. If you do your tax return yourself, you've got until the 31st of October, which is not too bad. Whereas if you do your taxes through a registered tax agent, you get an extension until the 15th of May the following year. And that's particularly relevant when you might have tax to pay for whatever reason, or it just takes you a while to get all of your documents together. And as well with that, so if you want to get that tax agent extension, you have to make sure that you essentially sign on with a tax agent by the 31st of October. So that's really your deadline, either have your own taxes done by the 31st or be on an accountant's list for them to do it for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
hope you guys have noted all that down.
Big keynote for your diary.
Totally. So are there any last little things do you think people would find interesting before we log off for the night?
I think, look, coming into this time of year, it's all going to be around tax deductions, minimising tax. And I think I just want people to start getting into the habit of everything has to happen before 30th of June. So, you know, start doing your homework now, start getting checklists together, speaking to your accountant, whatever it is, because if it's something like putting extra money into super or buying that last minute equipment that you may need, after the 30th of June, it's all too late. So it's probably really that planning piece. Even though everyone gets excited for tax returns in July, a lot of the pre-work should be done now.
And if you don't have an accountant, hit Julian up. So make the
Thanks,
world
Tess,
of difference. Personally, I've started using all your tips in my life. One of the great hacks that you said was your first one was actually going through my accounts and figuring out which subscriptions I was still signed up to. I think I was spending at least a random $30 a month on random apps that I'd subscribed to and just never noticed. So it all adds up, and yeah, they're good little hacks that we need to stay on top of.
100%. I look forward to seeing your paperwork this year as well, Tess.
Yeah, I better get onto that.
Yeah.
You neglected emails from you in the past week or two, but we'll get in there.
That's okay. There's plenty of time.
All right, well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Julian.
Thanks for having me, Tess. I'll talk to you. Bye.
Bye.